Hello and welcome to a new episode SEOPRESSO Podcast. My name is Björn Darko and today I'm speaking to Kun Tang and Marcus Pentzek about SEO for China. Both have just published their book SEO for China, which is fresh out of the press and covers every detail that needs to be considered when you do SEO in China. Kun is managing director at Jademond Digital, a digital agency concentrating on Chinese SEO, Baidu PPC, and Tmall e-commerce advice that helps international and also Chinese companies to succeed in China. He used to be a business development director for Searchmetrics, the SEO platform when it comes to SEO for China, and I'm glad that he's here. Marcus is chief consultant officer at Searchmetrics Digital Strategies Group, used to be a team lead SEO at UDG, director marketing and customer service at Yoiboy. I'm sorry if I'm misspelling it. In China, that's where his great passion for SEO in China comes from, and used to be also an SEO consultant at Abacus. He's one of the only Baidu experts in Germany, I would say, and I also had the great honor to work with him for a longer time. SEOPRESSO is presented to you by Searchmetrics, a SEO and content platform for enterprise businesses. If you want to know more about Searchmetrics, go visit searchmetrics.com and don't forget to subscribe to the SEOPRESSO podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, and everywhere where you find good podcasts. And one thing to remember, a review a day keeps the doctor away. Hi, Kun. Hi, Marcus. How are you doing?
Great.
Hi.
I think it is one of the international podcasts that I'm doing that has the widest distance. So, Kun, you're sitting in China, right?
Yeah. I'm in Guangzhou, South China.
South China, wow. And Marcus in Solingen, which is also far from where I live, because I live at the northest point of Germany at the Baltic coast.
We have this SEO triangle now.
Yeah, it's the SEO triangle. Exactly. We wanted to speak about SEO for China today. And for most of the people in Germany and maybe most of the people worldwide, it's kind of a black box because most of the people are not operating in China. It's also, when we think about, Chinese digitalization and how Chinese people use the internet and use the apps and use the features that are possible in China, it's, way different and far more futuristic than what we have, for example, in Germany. Kun, can you give us a look at the internet landscape in China to understand it a bit better before we move on?
Sure. I mean, obviously, everywhere is the same. We have a search engine. We do have social media. We also have a portal. We have e-commerce. And in terms of the search engine, obviously, Baidu is the number one, accounts for more than 80% of the market share. And the rest, including Sogou, Soso, 360 or /Qihoo, they come at the second. So it's been dynamic changed, particularly on the mobile search side. But on the desktop, it has been always Baidu number one, Qihoo 360 number two, and the rest take the other market shares. Since this is about search engine or SEO, I'm not going to talk too much about the e-commerce or social media part.
I just always remember this one video that I saw back in, I think it was 2012 when I was working for Ricardo. Ricardo belonged to Naspers, and Naspers was one of the shareholders of WeChat, I believe. So, and they were sending around a video of WeChat, and I was so amazed because WeChat was actually a super app already where you can do searches, booking hotels, book a taxi, you can pay your restaurant trips, and so on and so forth. Is that, just out of curiosity, is that a big threat to a search engine to have a super app like this?
Well, totally. I mean, people do search on WeChat. Particularly, they have a very clear intent what to find. They will go to WeChat, search for what they are looking for. WeChat has its own search engine, of course. It's indexed all the WeChat official accounts information. And it also used Sogou search engine to conclude the web search content as well. Of course, they always put the WeChat official accounts content at the top. Then they're moving down to WeChat mini program, then moving down to the web listing. So yeah, you're right. WeChat is definitely can be used as a search engine, but in terms of the usage, definitely search it's much smaller compared to browsing around, receiving recommended contents from WeChat itself or the content recommendation engine.
Marcus, Kun already mentioned it. Look, like there are essentially three search engines that share their market. Baidu with 84%, Sogo with 5%, Keyhole with 2%. We have kind of the similar setup in Germany or internationally outside of China as well with, Google, Baidu, and also Yandex. Is it in this case for China, is there one SEO strategy that fits them all, or is there like big differences?
Well, that's quite a good question. Basically, all big search engines, just like Yandex, Bing, Google, Baidu, they all work kind of the same. They have they're all relying on these algorithms that Google has invented, like all these link relations between websites to understand which websites have more authority, have more weight to be shown. But the details on how big is which factor, they really differ between all the search engines internationally and, of course, within China as well. But the strategy itself, I think we could conclude the same strategy can fit everything, basically.
And if we just look at Baidu, just to understand, their sense of quality, Kun, when it comes to updates, because I got from your book that there are also plenty of updates, also for Baidu that they do on their algorithm, just to get an idea for us what they're looking for in terms of quality. Can you elaborate a bit on this, what they're looking at when they release an algorithm update?
All the algorithm, it's following one direction, which is to provide user with a better user experience. From different ages, initially they trying to stop the spammer, meaning make sure the website is not ranking for keywords spamming, for example, or link spamming. That's definitely step one. Step two, when they notice there's more user coming from the mobile side, they make sure websites have mobile only will rank higher over website has no mobile friendly website. So yeah, I definitely see it's not really against what Google's been doing, but there were definitely some differences. For example, we have the Great Firewall, which is going to stop Western website if they are not hosted in China. So they're slowing down the Chinese user to visit those websites. So if the user experience is bad because it's slow to load, then you can't rank well, or you don't, or Baidu doesn't even index some of the pages. So that's probably the difference I want to focus.
When we now picture the SERP of Baidu, because most of the people necessarily don't know Baidu and also don't know the SERP, is there, Marcus, any kind of difference between the SERP that we have known with Google or also with Bing compared to the SERP of Baidu?
When we're just looking at the SERP, they seem to look quite alike. We have these regular results. We have a title that is heading the snippets. We have a short description. What's happening sometimes is that they simply put a picture in the front, which is nothing that you could leverage by a schema.org or anything like this. We do find SERP features like maps, video results, images. So this all looks quite alike. But there's one big difference, and that is Baidu itself. They are just not a search engine, not only a search engine. They are so much more. They have so many different services that they are offering their users, like a question forum with Jademond, like Wikipedia-like website with Baike. There's so many different services, even review services that they're simply offering. And those kind of services do really get sometimes the best ranks in the SERP. When you're looking at the SERP and look at the SERP in detail, you would very often find the first places being taken up by Google services. And this is one big difference. Another big difference is the usage of the sidebar in the desktop search, for example. When you're looking for an actor, you can see in Google search there are sometimes information about the actor. We call this the knowledge graph. In Baidu, they would rather show like related searches. So they demonstrate that they do know the entity of the actor, and they do show in those related searches different actors from the same field, for example. Or you're looking for an animal, then they're showing different animals, maybe from the same kind, like land animals or water animals. I would call out to be the differences in when you're looking at the SERP.
It's interesting what you say. Like, if I look now, on the SERP you said is quite alike. There are some differences, but would Baidu prefer more to rank Chinese websites or Chinese content over international websites? Like, my question is going more into, is it kind of also censored to not show internationally content, but rather Chinese content? Kun, maybe that's a question for you.
Again, I don't think Baidu discriminate international website unless the international website is losing in terms of the proximity. Are they hosting, or do they have a CDN proxy in China? If they don't, the loading speed is bad, then they are losing already. Secondly, the language itself. If the international website has Chinese or simplified Chinese content, then that's fine. As long as people who are searching for Chinese, simplified Chinese terms, you have a page that is fulfilling the search intent. As long as the page is really beating the other pages, or whether they're Chinese website or other international website, then you still have a chance to win on Baidu. So the algorithm is there, everybody's equal, but for international company or international website, they are basically losing because of their, one is the hosting place, the other is the content. Basically, that two parties, they have some disadvantages.
And as we said in the beginning, when we didn't hit recording, we were talking about the great Chinese firewall, right? And you're also covering this in the book, where you, as an international website, essentially have a downgrade, so to speak, because you need to go through this firewall, which will slow down your performance, so to speak. Even if you, in Germany, for example, have a super core web vitals and also a super lighthouse score, you will not make it in China because through the fact that you need to go through the Chinese firewall, and that will always deprioritize you versus a Chinese site that is hosted in China, right?
Yeah, totally. Like we just met, you asked the question about one SEO strategy, does it fit all? Yeah, I would say 90% is correct, but the 10% is if your website has content, which, for example, the video content served from Vimeo or YouTube, those link can definitely not be able to be accessed by the Chinese user because those links are not visible. And the other example can be the JavaScript or the fonts. They are using the Google's library, for example. Then again, they can't be accessible. Then they're going to slow down the website as well for Chinese users unless you find the counterparts that is served in China. So yeah, that's basically the firewall. It's against if we can manage to customize a little bit to tackle those questions for Chinese branch of international website, they still have a chance to win.
This is super interesting. I want to do a follow-up question maybe to you, Marcus, because I actually had planned to ask you the question about links. Marcus, can you tell me, because Kun just said if you have a lot of international links, for example, it will not necessarily be seen because of this. So does it mean that if you want to succeed in China, it's better to collect, Chinese links rather than, links from the US or also links from Germany for your website, because they won't be, useless, so to speak?
There are actually two aspects to this question. One aspect is the one that Kun already mentioned, that for many international websites, they're being hosted outside of China. They might even be hosted on servers that are already blocked by the Chinese firewall. So Baidu cannot even access them. And those links would definitely not help gaining any authority at all for the linked website. The other question is, or the other direction is that you need to look at, is that Baidu tries to not only find authoritative links, but to also value those links by the content from the page they're coming from, by the link text. So they're putting some kind of quality issues or quality measures here on the links as well. And if those links are from international websites, they are clearly not from Chinese content. And this is a big hint to Baidu that this might not be a link that helps this website to get more authority in China.
Very interesting. Let's move back from links. Kun, please, one question to you. Baidu also is a search engine. It has a crawling engine. And from my perspective, crawling language, if you want to speak, is very universal, right? They're looking at the same things. They're going through, the same links, trying to make sense out of it and so on and so forth. What I found really interesting in your book is that there are some major differences actually between Google crawling in indexing and also Baidu crawling in indexing. One example, for example, is that there is no canonical tag or no hreflang tag that Baidu is looking at. Can you elaborate a bit on the major differences when it comes to crawling and indexing?
Firstly, it basically works the same way as Google does. We do have, the Baidu crawler basically looking to the robot.txt, and the Baidu Webmaster Tool has a sitemap XML file that we can upload to Baidu Webmaster Tool, just guiding the crawler to where to find our information and what's the pages we want them to index. That's definitely works the same way as Google. But there were definitely also something different. One is you mentioned about the hreflang. Baidu doesn't really care that much, simply because Baidu, I would say 99% of the pages Baidu crawler crawl them back and put them in index are Chinese pages. So for them, different language doesn't matter much because they only need to worry about Chinese content. So it's unlike Google. Google obviously has so many different languages they want to.
But just one question in between. When you say just one question between, because you said language doesn't matter, but in China is like I think I don't have the exact number, but I can imagine such a big country that there are so many different languages and also dialects and stuff speaking. How can Baidu distinguish content based on those variety of languages?
Right. In China, it's a big country that definitely has different dialects. But in terms of the written language, it's simplified Chinese. Throughout the education system from kindergarten to university, everyone is learning one standard Chinese, which is simplified Chinese. Even though in Hong Kong and Taiwan, people definitely use more traditional Chinese, but in those markets, Baidu is not the majority of the search engine. They are Google. So again, for Baidu, it's simple. They just need to trickle one question, that is simplified Chinese.
Super interesting. I mean, it's easy if there's simplified Chinese. There's one universal language. I guess, and that's what I got from your book as well. There is actually, Chinese characters on the website. That's the content that is being displayed. is also like this written form of Chinese, is that simplified in terms of characters? Because from a conversation that I had with Marcus when he was learning all of these characters in his breaks and stuff, it turned out that there are so many and so much. How is that simplifying working?
But may I interrupt here? This is absolutely true. But I think this goes into one direction, into one problem that many international companies have. They set up a Chinese website and they first enter Hong Kong, and then they say, hey, we do have a Chinese website now. Now we should rank on Baidu, which is simply not the case because they're using traditional Chinese for their Hong Kong website, which is not the same Chinese as you should use for ranking in mainland China.
Okay, then let's get straight to the point. There is one simplified language. How can we imagine a keyword research process would look like? Like, at what are you looking at? What tools are you using? And how do you cluster keyword topics, for example? Marcus?
Well, the simplify is just like a word. Let's put it this way. When you're looking at the traditional Chinese characters that were used in China as well, they're simply like, I think it's like 200, 300, I'm not sure, maybe 500 characters that have been a little simplified, but they're still quite complicated to us Westerners. So it's just a name saying simplified Chinese, but it's not simple.
I just wanted to say, so it would be actually a disaster, a program for disaster, if you would use let's say a German keyword tool to identify Chinese keywords, especially because mostly they are in English and most probably just from Hong Kong.
We could surely go from the Western point of view first and look at the keywords that you have in your international company in those different languages and try to find them in the Chinese language as well. But this is just one way, and it could really go immensely wrong if you just translate those kind of keywords. So what you really should do is find a native Chinese speaker that does have SEO experience. So in most cases, it will probably not be simply someone who happens to be Chinese in your company, but rather someone who has experience with online marketing, SEO, SEA, or something like this. Explain them the topic that you want to rank for and have them make up the content and the keywords from their perspective. Of course, you can use tools.
I just wanted to say, so it would be actually a disaster, a program for disaster, if you would use, let's say, a German keyword tool to identify Chinese keywords, especially because mostly they are in English and most probably just from Hong Kong.
Yeah, that really depends on where the German part is in the keyword tool. I mean, there are keyword tools like Searchmetrics that do have a Chinese keyword database. And this Chinese keyword database is set up for simplified Chinese for China. So you could definitely use this one, but you have to have a native speaker to use this tool. Otherwise, what comes out is simply crap. And of course, there are other tools as well. I mean, the most important one probably being the Baidu keyword tool that is built for SEA, for search ads. There are other tools like Jademond, one of those go-to tools when you're hitting the Chinese market. And there are definitely native Chinese tools that I can't use because I don't read enough.
We also use some of the local tools. One of them is called 5118, and the other one, iZan. So there are several tools we can definitely use because they are not only use Baidu data, but also 360, Sogo, Soso, even sometimes I think 5118 is also getting the data from Zhihu as well. So that will give us more option if you are looking for a keywords idea, if Baidu doesn't give you enough.
Mm-hmm. Kun, another question to you, like when we just consider on-page SEO, we all know for Google it's super important. There are specific elements that are important that need to be, maybe keyword focused, also nicely structured and stuff. When it comes to on-page SEO for Baidu, is it similar to what we have at Google, or is there also a difference what to look at?
Well, firstly, I mean, the most important one is title tag. I think this is universal for Google and also other search engines. The second important one would be meta description, because we still need to put the keywords into meta description, which may sound boring, but that somehow still counts the repentance of those keywords in the meta description. So the heading 1, heading 2, alt text, body text, even meta keywords, even Baidu said it's not important, but still there's some signal over there as well.
Okay, and I also read, and that goes back to the simplified Chinese again, and now with these on-page factors, it's more an accessibility factor, to be honest. But you said in the book you wrote that you shouldn't use Chinese characters in the URL, even though it's simplified. Why is that, Marcus?
Yeah, this is quite easy. I mean, the search engine, Baidu, can definitely technically crawl and index URLs that do have Chinese characters in them, be it in the domain name or be it even in the path of the URL. The thing is simply the human user, because just imagine, I mean, we have it in the German language as well with those umlauts, other special characters in French or in the Russian language. When you're picking such a URL from your browser and you're placing it someplace else, then most of the tools would simply decompose the UTF-8 into something that is simply not readable anymore. And this really doesn't help the user to identify what's going on there, what's with this URL. Some might even be afraid that they just got a virus or something. What you really want is URLs that do mean something to the user. So many Chinese websites do use English words within the URL. Many websites do use pinyin in the URL. Pinyin is just the Latinized form of Chinese. So you're basically writing the syllables in Latin letters, and every Chinese can read this. I mean, they're even typing this way. Yeah, they're typing pinyin, and the device where you're typing it in, be it your smartphone or the computer, knows which characters you mean.
I mean, this is very nice because it's...
Yeah, I second to that. And besides, people also sometimes use a number, a numeric into the URL, simply to make it shorter. Because pinyin sometimes for one Chinese character, it may require more than 4 or 5 letters of pinyin. So yeah, for big website, they tend to use number, which is make sure the whole thing URL length shorter.
It is user friendly at the end of the day. It gives the user more security and also gives them more, sense of what is behind the domain to avoid spam or avoid any traps, right? It's a very user friendly thing. Last question that I have, and I think that is the question that, maybe most of the listeners are interested in, that especially plan maybe to, expand to China. When I, as a German company now, want to do business in China, you, Kun, as an advisor to international companies as well, like what is in general like your advice? How should a website be, set up? Like, is there a specific domain that's in use, CDNs and so on and so forth? What is like in general the advice to set up a website in China if you want to do business in China?
Well, firstly, I would go with .cn or .com.cn domain, even though on Baidu, you still see a lot of .com websites ranking very well, but they are basically very old domain, has been in China for a long time. For example, 163.com or Sohu.com, they are basically the pre-bubble websites. But if it is a company website from a big international corporation, if you want to identify this website is for China, then .cn domain probably, or .com.cn domain would be the better choice. The reason I'm suggesting it's using .cn rather than a folder or subdomain. It gives the user a more clear identity that you have dedicated a domain for that. And Baidu also tend to rank dedicated domain rather than subdomain or folder comparatively. And even from the SEO professional, it's easier to manage in terms of setting up Baidu Webmaster Store, verify the site, checking the number of pages has been indexed through this simple site column command. So yeah, I would go with that in terms of the domain choice. Then whether you should go with it as a separate site hosted in China, separated from the main website, I would say it depends. Obviously, having a centralized website backend is easier for the company to control the content, the messages, and the user data, because you want to. So, for example, if you want to do a lead nurturing campaign, you definitely want to do this through one system rather than having one system for China and one system for the rest of the world. So that's why I see a lot of big companies take this approach. Then for China side, they go with the CDN provider. I'm talking about very expensive CDN, for example, the AWS CDN. They can definitely keep the company using the same system, but providing much faster user experience for their China pages. But if it's a medium or smaller companies who might enter their business in China step by step, I would say having a smaller dedicated China website could be an easier choice to make.
Super nice. Xie Kun and Xie Marcus. I hope I pronounced it well enough. It should say thank you very much for the very interesting podcast. We see and hear next week again on the SEOPRESSO podcast. Ciao, ciao.